the future was not yet decided. Gasoline was loud, unreliable, and difficult to control. Electric cars were quiet but limited. And steam, long trusted in industry and railroads, already had a proven record. Before engines roared, steam whispered. And no automobile embodied that moment better than the Stanley Steamer. The Stanley brothers believed something radical for their time. They believed the automobile did not need to be violent to be powerful. It did not need noise to signal progress. It did not need complexity to prove intelligence. Steam already worked. It was smooth and it was silent. It delivered torque instantly. And it did so without gears, without explosions, and without drama. The first Stanley steam cars appeared at the turn of the 20th century, during an era when roads were poor, fuel quality was inconsistent, and mechanical reliability was far from guaranteed. Gasoline cars struggled to start. Electric cars struggled with range. Steam cars simply worked. Turn the burner on. Build pressure. Go. A Stanley Steamer didn't idle. It waited. And once it was ready, it moved with a calm authority that no gasoline car of the era could match. There was no clutch, no gearbox, no shifting, just smooth, continuous motion. Drivers often described the experience as floating rather than driving. The absence of vibration was striking. The lack of noise was unsettling to some. But to others, it felt like the future. The Stanley brothers were engineers, not marketers. Their cars reflected that mindset. They were simple in appearance, but sophisticated in execution. A lightweight boiler, a compact steam engine, direct drive to the rear axle, few moving parts, minimal friction, elegant logic. While other manufacturers competed on novelty, the Stanley Steamer competed on refinement. By the early 1900s, Stanley steam cars were among the most respected vehicles in America. Doctors favored them. Engineers trusted them. Professionals chose them because they were dependable and fast, much faster than most people realize. In 1906, a Stanley Steamer set a land speed record of over 127 miles per hour. At a time when most cars struggled to reach 40, a steam-powered vehicle proved it could outrun gasoline entirely. That moment should have settled the debate. It didn't, because the automobile was never only about engineering. It was also about convenience, and that is where steam began to lose ground. A Stanley Steamer required patience. Water needed to be replenished. The boiler required attention. Startup time, while reasonable for the era, felt slow as expectations changed. Gasoline engines improved rapidly. Electric starters eliminated hand cranking. Fuel became easier to find. Infrastructure formed around internal combustion. Steam remained elegant, but gasoline became convenient. Still, the Stanley Steamer held on longer than most people remember. Through the 1910s and into the early 1920s, Stanley cars continued to be built with care and consistency. The design evolved slowly, deliberately. Owners didn't replace them quickly. They maintained them. They trusted them. Driving a Stanley was not about urgency. It was about composure. Acceleration was immediate but never abrupt. Speed arrived quietly. Motion felt effortless. There was no sensation of strain. That calmness defined the experience. And it defined a philosophy that would later disappear. The Stanley Steamer was built in a time when progress meant refinement, not replacement. When improvement meant making something better, not merely newer. That mindset was common in New England manufacturing culture. Precision, restraint, durability, craft. Connecticut, Massachusetts, and the surrounding region were filled with machinists, toolmakers, and engineers who believed quality spoke louder than promotion. The Stanley Steamer belonged to that world. Not flashy, not aggressive, but deeply considered. By the early 1920s, the writing was on the wall. Gasoline cars had won the market, not because they were superior in every way, but because they fit a rapidly changing lifestyle. The Stanley Company ceased automobile production in 1924, not in failure, but in quiet conclusion. The car had done exactly what it was designed to do, and then it stepped aside. Today, standing next to a Stanley Steamer feels surreal. The car looks delicate, but it is not fragile. It feels antique, but not primitive. The technology feels alien, yet strangely logical. It reminds us that progress is not linear, that good ideas can be abandoned for reasons unrelated to quality. The Stanley Steamer is not remembered because it lost. It is remembered because it was right. Right about smoothness, right about torque, right about silence, right about mechanical simplicity. In many ways, modern electric cars are rediscovering principles that steam cars mastered more than a century ago. Instant torque, quiet operation, fewer moving parts. The future looks suspiciously like the past, and that is the quiet legacy of the Stanley Steamer. It was not loud enough to dominate history, but it was thoughtful enough to endure within it, not as a relic, not as a curiosity, but as proof that engineering does not need to shout to be correct. Sometimes it simply waits. If you enjoyed this story, consider supporting the channel by liking the video, sharing it with someone who appreciates quiet engineering, and subscribing for future long-form stories like this. New documentaries are released regularly. Thank you for listening.